So what I wanted to share with you today is a line of research that we've started in 20, let's see, we're now 25, so 21 or something, maybe even a little bit earlier, where we started looking at what does it mean to people to receive chaplaincy care. And we've done this, among others, in a large national project, the Knowledge Workplace on Spiritual Care and Meaning. And you see some names on the screen of the team that I've been working with in developing and executing this research. And what I'd like to do is take you through a few steps that we took and what we learned there. And the main question that I want to address in this talk is, how do chaplains contribute to the flourishing of their clients? And I want to do that through three smaller or more specific questions, which are: what are goals of chaplaincy care? What are outcomes of this type of care, and how can these outcomes be assessed? Because that also says something about what you can and cannot see in the effects that chaplaincy care has. But first, I want to give you a little bit of context because I'm speaking here from the Netherlands, and it's a quite specific context that has a lot of parallels with the situation in the US, but is not completely the same. So I'm highlighting a few things. The first is that in the Netherlands, all chaplaincy care is interfaith care. So in principle, all of the chaplains that work here provide their care for people from all denominations, including the humanistic denomination. We really view the humanists as a specific worldview, life view, so we look at it as a specific denomination. And of course, also the nuns. So, and we also have education for chaplains. We tend to use the word spiritual caregivers for them, who are non-religious or non-spiritual. So also our chaplains can be in the non category. So this also, I think, already makes our situation quite specific, because in most other countries in the world, chaplaincy is organized either by denomination, or there is quite a clear presence of the denominations in the field, and that's less the case in the Netherlands, although of course we do have chaplains who work from specific denominations as well. The second thing I want to highlight is that chaplaincy in the Netherlands takes place in a lot of different contexts. So we have, of course, military chaplaincy, we have our chaplaincy in prisons, we have our chaplains, our hospital or healthcare chaplains, as we have them all over the world. But in the Netherlands, since 2019, there has been quite a big growth of chaplaincy in outpatient, primary, and community care. So we have quite a number of chaplains who work either alongside general practitioners or social workers, or more community-oriented care facilities. And they are independent chaplains, so they have their own independent practice as a chaplain. They are united in networks. We call them centers for life questions, but they are not organized in teams like you would have in the other fields where chaplains work. And the research that I'm going to take you through in the next 20 minutes or so is focused on chaplaincy in this context. So what we have examined are the goals and outcomes of chaplaincy in outpatient, primary, and community care. And we've done that, as I mentioned before, in the context of a large national project, the Knowledge Workplace on Meaning and Spiritual Care. And it's also important to note that within this large network, it spans most of the activities of chaplains in this outpatient primary and community care context, but there are a few specific target groups basically that we have included, which are veterans, people who are 50 years or older, palliative, people who receive palliative outpatient care. This is a very specific group to the Netherlands, which are victims of earthquakes that have been triggered by gas extraction. I am in the north of the Netherlands. We have had a very long history of gas extraction, and this has made the ground very unstable. And so we've had, over the course of, I think, 5 decades now, had increasing number of earthquakes. They are relatively small if you compare it to other countries, but they are chronic, so it creates a lot of instability in the communities here. Another target group is that of unhoused people, and the final one are parents of children who receive palliative care. So we've chosen for this project, this Knowledge Workplace, a number of groups who are relatively marginalized also in chaplaincy in general, in care in general, except maybe for the people who are 50 years and older. They get a lot of attention in healthcare, but that's for financial reasons that they are included. I won't go into that because that will make things even more complicated than they already are. So just to give you a bit of an idea of, okay, so who are we talking about here? So we're talking about interfaith chaplaincy in this specific context for these specific target groups. What we have done is over the course of 2 years, we've conducted in several stages some research, empirical research, and before that we conducted a literature review. And what we wanted to know so if you're asking the question, how do chaplains contribute to flourishing? What do chaplains envision for their work, right? So what are goals of this profession? What do they think they should contribute to flourishing? So the first thing that we did was we dove into the writing, but several types of publications that chaplains wrote on chaplaincy to figure out, so what do they themselves say about what the goals of their work are. And this is really the full breadth of chaplaincy. So it's also military chaplaincy, chaplaincy in prisons, all over. And then we said, okay, now we have a bit of a view of, what chaplaincy in general could be about. How does this then apply to these specific contexts? Are there also differences in the focus of chaplains between different contexts? Do they have different visions of what the goals of their work are? And so what we did in this project of the Knowledge Workplace, so specifically toward those target groups in outpatient primary and community care, we conducted focus groups with 17 chaplains, 20 other professionals, and 16 clients of chaplains. The other professionals could really be any type of other professional that was associated with chaplaincy. And in that same project, we conducted interviews with 24 clients of other clients of chaplains. So these were different from the 16 clients that were in the focus groups. And what we found was that there seemed to be 4 overarching goals, both for chaplaincy in the broad sense, but more specifically for chaplaincy in this more outpatient and community context. And we've debated very long about what to call these goals because words are very sensitive in chaplaincy. And for now, we've chosen these words. So what's at the core we see of what chaplains try to contribute is what we've called relational affirmation. What they're looking for is that clients feel seen, that they feel heard, that they feel valued, that they can experience a sense of safety in the relationship with the chaplain, that they can then also generalize to other relationships that they have. So this relational aspect of chaplaincy is really central to what they try to manifest basically in their work. And then there are three, I would say, maybe more formal goals that chaplains have. One of these is what we've called worldview orientation. So this means that in their meetings with clients, chaplains try to help the clients to understand themselves better, understand their behaviors better, understand the situation that they're in better, and place this in a larger framework. So they're examining the worldview of the client with the client. They're trying to clarify this worldview. They're trying to help the client to identify uh, what's most important to them, maybe how they can live their worldview as well. Because sometimes, this is a very cognitive thing, but you don't fully experience it in the way you live your life or the things that happen to you. So these are the types of things that fall under this worldview orientation. Understanding your worldview, which includes visions of yourself, of the world around you, of the sacred, and giving this body, basically. The second part that's highly connected also to this worldview orientation is coping with life events and circumstances. This is a bit more specific. So worldview orientation is really about your general view of life and yourself, whereas coping with life events and circumstances is more about the specific things that happen to you in life or the situation that you are in. For example, if you're in this earthquake area, or you are unhoused, how can you navigate these situations, and what can your worldview, how can it help you, or how does it not help you to navigate these situations? How can you also, a part of this is also how do you deal with the emotions that you're experiencing, giving words to those, enduring them, etc. And the final one, the fourth goal, is a focus toward transcendence and connectedness. We're understanding transcendence also both in a more religious and in a more secular sense. So transcendence is your relationship to the sacred, something that is larger than yourself. But of course, something that is larger than yourself can also be, a larger community or nature or these types of things. So we're understanding this as sort of stepping out of your daily experiences, practices, and reconnecting to a larger whole. And when we're looking specifically at the connectedness part of this, we're also looking at social relationships. So do you feel embedded in a social network? Do you feel connected to other people, or are you feeling very lonely? So this was the first step that we took in trying to understand, so what do What do chaplains strive for? What do they try to accomplish? And also, not only from the point of view of chaplains, but also how do colleagues of chaplains look at, well, why would you go to a chaplain or ask a chaplain, and the same for the clients. But then we were looking at, so this is still, quite high level, a bit abstract. So what does that actually mean for what people experience when they see a chaplain? If this is what you're working toward, what does that look like? How does that sound? What does it feel like? So we looked more closely at outcomes of chaplaincy. What do people say they experience after they have seen a chaplain? And we've used the same focus groups for this. So we held with each of these people 2 focus groups. First, we asked them about goals, then we asked them about outcomes. And in the interviews that we had with the 24 clients, we also asked both questions. What do you hope for with the chaplain, and how did you feel when you were in conversation or in contact with them? And there we saw that if we tried to group what people were saying, we could no longer keep to the categories of goals that we had formulated before. They are still in there. So when you read the specific items, you'll think, oh yeah, this is more about worldview. This is more about relational affirmation. This might be more about coping and connectedness. But what we saw was that when people talk about how they had experienced the contact that they had with the chaplain, and how chaplains also themselves described what they did, and how they interacted with the clients, all of these goals started to become intermingled. So they are highly dependent on each other. Sometimes there's a bit more attention to one type of goal. For example, what we saw in care for veterans and for the unhoused, and also for the victims of earthquakes, was that for their relational affirmation is really, one of the main goals, and all the other things are a bit secondary. But in a lot of the other contexts where we talk to people, they were maybe more focused on specific life events, or they were more focused on their worldview more in general. So you see subtle differences in where the focus lies, but all 4 of them are always present. And when we asked people in the focus groups, we asked them, well, for each of these goals, try to circle some outcomes. We saw that that was almost impossible. A lot of the goals had the same outcome, in that, for example, especially in the category of well-being that's on the slide, no matter if, the question was more toward worldview, or the question was more toward coping, or toward relational affirmation or connectedness, feelings of lightness, of relief, of peace, of hope, especially peace and hope, they appeared always. So no matter whatever you work on, these will always be effects or outcomes of your chaplaincy care. But there were also a few more specific ones, which you see under the category of relationship with the chaplain. So there you see the things that are very clearly also relational affirmation: feeling seen, heard, acknowledged, feeling less lonely, feeling more trust through the relationship with the chaplain. And you see the meaning-making category, which is more the worldview orientation and the coping with life events. Getting more insight into oneself, into life circumstances, being able to work with your emotions and life events better, feeling your emotions, being able to let them go, or at least, not be stuck in them. So maybe not necessarily fully letting them go, but at least not being stuck. And on processing them, experiencing a bit more grip on life, that you think, okay, I sort of see where things are going, or I can make good decisions, seeing a path forward, having a perspective for the future. Many people described that they felt kind of stuck. And after seeing the chaplain, they felt, okay, I can now envision a different life, or a way to live my life further. And of course, connectedness with self, others, and or sacred sources of strength. So these were, and this is just a sample of the things. I mean, people named hundreds of things, but just to highlight a few of the things that came up in the conversations very often. So these are, some a bit more specific ways in which we see that chaplains contribute to the flourishing of their clients. Then we asked, okay, this is really great. We have a bit of a view of what chaplains do and what this means to people, but we might want to be able to look at this also more systematically and see, maybe do research in future on differences between contexts, differences between professionals, because of course the chaplain is not the only one who provides spiritual care. So how might we be able to do that? And what we did on the basis of the data or that we gathered with the focus groups and the interviews is we created an outcome measure. We call it the Dutch Chaplaincy Outcome Measure. It's a PROM for the ones who are more familiar with quantitative methods. But it has a very specific form. So usually when we make outcome measures, we make a questionnaire with a scale of 1 to 5, and lots of items where you say, I agree or I disagree, or this applies to me to a certain degree or not. This instrument is slightly different. What we did is we took 25 of the outcomes that we found through the focus groups and the interviews, the 25 that were most common, and we transformed them into I statements to reflect how a person is doing at that time. And what people are asked to do is look at, so they get these on individual pieces of paper, these 25 statements, and then they have to sort them on a grid. And this is what you see on the slide. So this is a completed grid. And the grid runs from least fitting to most fitting. So the person is asked the question, look at the statements, how well do they represent how you're feeling at the moment or in the past. Usually we ask in the past 3 days to get a bit of a stable reading. And then they sort all of the statements on this grid. And what's different is that this is relative to each other. So people are first asked to do the outer polls. So they are asked, take all the items that you think fit with how you're doing right now. And first place in the upper right, I think that's also right to you, corner, the most fitting statement that best represents how you're feeling right now, and then order all of the other ones in relation to that one. So the ones who are in the column to the left of the most fitting one are still very representative of how the person feels, but slightly less than the most fitting one, and so on. So the more you move to the left or to the middle, basically, of the figure, the less representative it is of how you feel. And then you move to the left hand. So then you take the statements that are least fitting for how you're feeling, how you're doing, and then you're sorting those from left to right. And what this does, it creates sort of a profile of the we haven't come up with a good word for the concept yet, but I would say maybe the spiritual well-being of the person. So that's also a way to get a bit of a larger picture of, how do chaplains contribute to the flourishing of their clients, in the sense that you can compare the profiles of the different people with each other, but also of people who've seen one chaplain compared to those who've seen a different chaplain, or between contexts or between professionals, to see where, how do chaplains impact the well-being of people. We've to sort of further, we haven't piloted this method very um, extensively yet. But what we did do is take some of the items and to see, well, how do people respond to the items, but also what do people report in terms of outcome more broadly. We've taken some of these items and implemented them in what we call an impact assessment of chaplaincy in the outcome primary, or the outpatient primary and community care. And all of the chaplains who work in that context have given their clients a little card with some questions on them, some experience questions. How have you experienced the contact with the chaplain? But also a question on, after you've seen the chaplain, I feel some type of way. And we've given them a choice from 5 of the, or 6 of the items that are in this outcome measure. And we selected those that represented the different dimensions or the different goals of chaplaincy, to get a bit of a broader view on, so where do most effects take place, on which dimension. And we did that both for individual contacts with the chaplain and for group sessions. So what you see here are the results for the individual contexts. 420 clients filled out this evaluation. And you can see that half of the clients felt that after meeting with the chaplain, they could cope better with their circumstances, and they felt less like they have to do things alone. So they felt less lonely in their situation or their circumstances. And almost half of the clients said that they could express how they felt more clearly or better. So they had more words to express how they feel. So this is very interesting for us to see where, you might identify some primary effects that chaplains have, where it seems, at least from, the 5 options that we gave them, coping, a sense of connectedness or loneliness, and expression are very important effects. What we saw, people were also able to add their own response. So there was an other, and then they could say whatever they liked. And what we saw there is that quite a number of people also said, I understand myself and my circumstances better. So for next year, we're going to do this again. And then we're going to add an item on understanding and see how this compares. For the group meetings, we asked the similar questions, but with slightly different outcomes, because they're group meetings, so you would expect a slightly different focus in what this means to people. and 382 people answered this question. And you can see that clearly that over half of the people indicated that they felt less like they're going through this alone. Which is, of course, what you would expect of a group meeting, right? You have a group meeting with a chaplain on a certain topic or a life circumstance or whatever, and being able to share this makes you feel less lonely. So we were quite happy that over half of the participants indicated that they experienced this. And here we also see that quite a substantial number of people said that they could better express how they feel. So this is also something very significant to chaplaincy, that through the conversations, either with the chaplain or with the group that is being led by a chaplain, people gain more words or maybe better words for whatever they are experiencing. And this is something that we don't hear very often about, what chaplains accomplish, because we're usually much more focused on more subjective experiences and well-being, whereas uh, this seems to be quite an important impact that the chaplaincy has. So to sort of summarize this, what we've learned from these years of study is that at the very least, because of course this is not all that chaplains do and accomplish, this is just a little bit of it that we could gather through talking to people. So the least that chaplains do in contributing to flourishing is to help them feel seen, heard, and valued, to help them understand themselves, the world around them, their circumstances, to feel less alone, and to express themselves better. I thought I had another slide that said thank you, but it seems to have disappeared. So I'll just say thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them.